Some of the more observant of you might notice I don't have my webcam up. Any of you who've been around for the last few days probably know why that is. I can talk at all today, but as you can tell, my voice is not completely recovered yet. And it's still kind of difficult to talk. So as that is being stated, I've decided to limit today's Loreweek to a single topic, which is good because nothing has happened news-wise. I mean, you know, Nintendo's putting out some phone game called Dracalia Lost. Whoop-de-crap. And they're doing beta testing for Stardew Valley's multiplayer mode. So that's neat. Right? The comet finally hitting Fortnite. Turns out that it's pretty much what we all expecting. For anybody who's actually following that, they're going to add some kind of like superpower mix to the game, which actually sounds pretty cool, I'll admit. And just goes to show once again why Fortnite is better than PUBG. What? Don't look at me like that. God, what else? I actually don't remember anything else this week. And like I said, it's been a pretty dead week for news. My own schedule has been kind of destroyed as a consequence of this, because I was supposed to actually be working on Xenosaga this last week, and instead I was sick and physically incapable of talking properly. On the plus side, I did get a lot of theater work done. I'm very happy about that. I'm actually pretty much caught up as far as other people's stuff so far. I'm up to chapter 5 as far as my own editing, so that's neat. I was going to get some WoW editing done as well. But then we ended up playing Kingdom Come Deliverance yesterday instead. Which is fine. I mean, I need to get through that game. It's a friggin' huge game, and I don't have infinite time to stream. So, you know. I also got a lot of work done on the website. The website is actually almost ready to go in a format that I'm happy with. I just need to finish filling out the fact page, and then it'll be good. So I'm still working on that. Sorry, I have a really big headache, guys. Now, if I do end up streaming Kingdom Come Deliverance today, which is likely at the moment, there's a really high chance I'll take a break in the middle, because my neck isn't hurting quite as badly as yesterday, and as a consequence, I think I might be able to actually take a nap in the middle of the day and try to recoup a little bit. We'll see what my throat does, too. My throat has been very strange all morning. So I mentioned I only had a single topic. It's funny because that Valvedrix showed up because she actually suggested a topic, but unfortunately, she suggested a massive topic, which I don't feel up to discussing right now. So I'll save that for later. I want to talk about Ben Brode. Anyone know who that is? Oh yeah, I apologize if my breathing is a little more audible than usual. I'm literally incapable of breathing through my nose right now. So I have to do very deliberate mouth breathing. I'm a mouth breather, guys. Ben Brode is someone who worked at Blizzard, and he was pretty much one of the mainliners, as I like to use the phrase, for Hearthstone. He's been a pretty big name at Blizzard for a long time now, and he bowed out. He retired out of Blizzard just, I think it's actually 2 weeks ago now. So, now that's very confusing in its own right. Hearthstone is still going pretty strong. It's not as strong as when it launched, but Hearthstone is still making Blizzard money hand over fist, as all of the congratulations, Hendrix, as all of the publicly available financial reports will show. So Hearthstone is still going very strong and very well. So why bow out, right? That's the question. And I've heard a few people ask why. Why would he decide to especially since they just put out an expansion. Like, they put out the expansion, and then like a week later, he's like, well, I'm out. To me, now this is pure conjecture. To me, it just seems logical. And I want to explain why a little bit. Now, I don't know if this is true or not, but one thing that is innately true in... Okay. One thing that I have observed to be consistently true in humanity is that creative minds want to try new things, and a creative mind will get stifled doing the same thing over and over. Now, to explain that a little bit, obviously there's still room for creativity in the same process. You know, making a card game still is going to involve a lot of new ideas and concepts and stretching your creative muscles. So that serves in my experience as something of a buffer. If you're allowed to stretch within the confines of your creative process, you still have the ability to put back that dissatisfaction with it. By contrast, a creative mind who has to, put a stamp on a piece of paper, 24/7, etc., or not 24/7, goddammit, 9 to 5, 5 days a week, that person is going to hate themselves and want to get a new job as quickly as possible. Or usually, and this is in my experience more common, will try to find some hobby to form a creative outlet. This is one of the reasons why so many games have had such strong modding communities, is because creative minds behind those mods work at, an office job, or they work at a grocery store, or they work at an insurance company, or whatever, right? Now, none of this is judgment or shaming, by the way. I want to make that very clear. That's not the point. But the point is, even when you have a creative outlet in your job, after a while, some people just want to try something new. And I especially mention this when it comes to Ben Brode, because I noticed that as part of his announcement, he is actually going to move on to another gaming developer company. So it's not like he's leaving game development. He just wants to work on something else. Now, the other reason I wanted to comment on this is because I have heard several people wonder if Blizzard Activision, and I'm saying that way very clearly, has been mistreating its employees over the last few years, because we've lost several major key names at Blizzard over the last few years. I'm sorry, one moment, please. Now, I actually have no idea if that's true or not. I have no information on the matter. That's the only reason I'm kind of hesitant to even label that a rumor, because no one has even mentioned anything about employee abuse or misuse or mismanagement or whatever. I haven't seen anything like that. So I have no idea if that's actually true. It wouldn't surprise me too much, because corporate politics are a very real thing and can create a very stressful environment, even in a otherwise positive existence. I suppose in reality land, we might have a situation where it's both, where maybe there is some kind of stiflement coming down from the corporate architecture of Blizzard Activision, in addition to a desire to try new things. Now, I was actually going to bring that up. So Kid Viper mentions in chat there, maybe some of the people who are working here were just kind of sick of basically being told no, don't work on that. Like Titan, I've reported on Titan several times, And Titan was effectively completely scrapped. The only bits of Titan that survived are the base concepts and base ideas that ended up being recycled over into Overwatch. And there were a couple, but obviously Overwatch is its own product. Similar to how StarCraft 2 ended up using bits and pieces from StarCraft Ghost. But that's the thing too, isn't it? We know of a bare minimum of 3 games that Blizzard was working on that got canned in the last, say, 10 years at this point. Those games would be StarCraft Ghost, Titan, and Diablo 3. The original Diablo 3, for those of you not aware of what I'm talking about, I will try to summarize in brief. The original Diablo 3 was something that was built in a completely different manner. It was going to be a completely different game, and that was shut down and canned. I don't know the reason why. I have no information on that, so I can only speculate. But they then retooled it into the Diablo 3 that ended up coming out. For good or for bad, I don't actually know. Because I actually like Diablo 3, so what the hell do you want from me? Now, Hell of a Mouse brings up something. He says that Activision has no creative power over Blizzard. It's worth noting that there is technically no such thing as Activision or Blizzard from a corporate power structure perspective. Mergers are actually pretty messy things when it comes to corporations. And it's I gotta be honest, I don't think I have the voice in me right now to really go into an in-depth analysis of what exactly a corporate merger involves. It's a mess. Let's say that and move on. But I admit I do not know the specific structure of the reporting lines, and I don't know the corporate politics, because even, let me explain, let me put it this way. Even if Bob, who is one of the higher-ups of the conglomerate, says we shouldn't put forth such and such product, we should instead work on this other thing that would make us more money, loot boxes, right? I'm sorry. Funnily enough, I did do some voice acting this week. It was for someone who was dying, though, not a villain. Where was I? So, Bob, right? Bob the evil one. We'll just call him Bob Evil. There we go. He wants to be an evil corporate dickhead, okay? Straight from the 90s, right? I can't breathe. And he's decided, you know what? I think we shouldn't work on this creative project. It will not make us as much money as other projects can make. Now, if Bob Evil does not have a direct reporting line to the developers or the lead managers or the project leads or whatever, then he has no literal power to be able to say, don't do this, right? That's fairly understandable. However, thanks to the way corporate politics works, he might have the ability to start pushing that idea in meeting rooms or in closed-door meetings, or whatever the hell they actually call those nowadays, where he goes and starts pushing this idea on the other managers, some of whom do actually have the actual direct reporting lines to make those literal decisions. And if Bob Evil manages to push his particular party line hard enough and convince enough people of the direction he wants to do things, then some of the actual project leads or corporate leads might then say, well, maybe we shouldn't do this. Maybe we shouldn't push for this creative game because it's not going to make us this much money, or we might get in trouble with the with accounting, or and here's a worse one. It might threaten my job. You know, if I am not doing. I'm trying to think how to phrase this. Corporate politics tend to follow the brownie point system. So if you don't feel particularly secure in your job, trying to get more brownie points to ensure that you actually are like, hey, you know, I would like, I'm going to agree with what some of the other brass are saying, so that I am in better standing with the rest of the management team, means you have more security in line on your job, right? And it's also worth noting, of course, that even though someone may or may not have a direct reporting line, multiple people above someone can arrange for someone to be fired. If Lurker is a manager and is directly above SJ, Lurker has the power to fire SJ, right? Like that's just something that's within the contract, so to speak. However, if Hazardous over there is unconnected, no direct reporting line, no dotted line, however, further up on the corporate structure, Hazardous still has the power to fire SJ. He just has to go a more roundabout way to do it. He has to basically file for it and petition for it and go to HR or whichever internal organization handles that, and say, hey, Hazardous could also go to Lurker and say, hey, fire him for these reasons, ... So, wow, we got a little off topic, because I really wanted to talk about creative drive here, not corporate politics. It is, of course, always about economics in the end, isn't it? But I don't know if it's actually about economics. I don't actually know if this is an economic decision that's been made. I don't know if Blizzard Activision, and again, I use that specifically because Blizzard Activision is the conglomerate, has been influencing the Blizzard side of things. I will admit that there are certain actions in Blizzard over the last few years that don't make sense to me personally. Diablo 3 came out, didn't do well, but then they put themselves down to the grindstone and they turned it into a good game. Reaper, I don't remember the full expansion name, but the Reaper expansion came out. It was phenomenal. It was awesome. It was awesome gameplay-wise. It was awesome story-wise. They added new concepts. They added new post-game mode and an even better New Game Plus. And then a really big period of basically nothing other than adding in the cube. And then Necromancer. And that's it. The game and indeed the franchise have effectively been abandoned for years at this point. Reaper of Souls, thank you. Which I highly recommend, by the way, if you haven't played it. I'm actually looking forward to going through it again myself for the lore one when we get there. StarCraft, right? Okay, so StarCraft 2 came out. Wings of Liberty sold like crazy. Heart of the Swarm sold like crazy. Legacy of the Void didn't sell as well, but still sold very, very well. And they introduced co-op missions. They introduced, which are fantastic, by the way. I love co-op mode. They introduced co-op. They introduced Archon mode. They introduced more support for the tournament side of things and for the ladder side of things. And then that's kind of it. They've released a few more cosmetic packs for StarCraft 2. They've released a few more co-op commanders for StarCraft 2, and that's kind of it. They also did that good port of StarCraft 1, which does deserve some credit because they did put a surprisingly large amount of effort into that port. That's why I call it a good port. But, I don't understand why that product is basically being ignored, unless I was to get really cynical, because, well, let's look at two of their IPs that have been receiving a lot of support lately. Those would be Overwatch and Hearthstone. And actually, Heroes of the Storm as well, if I'm being honest. Overwatch has been making more and more attempts to add story to the game. And, yeah, that's true. I forgot to mention that. David Kim is another person who has left Blizzard within the last 2 years. I meant to bring him up. I'm sorry, one moment. I would say Tyranny, personally, Sonic Doctor. Because I didn't like the gameplay of Pillars of Eternity, and I felt Tyranny did it better. So Overwatch has been receiving a decent amount of support. Excuse me. They put out their second major third major co-op slash story thing recently, and they actually released that during the quarterly report. It has actually been doing very well. Lots of feedback, lots of people spending money on the loot boxes that came with it. They have been consistent about adding new heroes, and they've been semi-consistent about adding new maps. I don't really know what to think about that. But if we look over at, for example, Hearthstone, that's another example of a game that has been receiving an increase in, let's call them motives for the player to spend more money, motivators for the player to spend more money, in addition to what I would also call real content. With the, I can't remember what it was called, the gnomes and, no, not gnomes, gnolls, kobolds, something like that. I know kobolds are involved. Anyways, with the Koboldy expansion that they released prior to this one, prior to the Witchhaven one, there was a lot of push for basically a completely new game mode, the dungeon crawl mode, which is actually really awesome and legitimately entertaining and fun and rewarding too if you manage to get through it. That's awesome. And yeah, as Blackfile pointed out, I was getting to this point as well. Heroes of the Storm, while it hasn't received quite the same support that the other two, they have really been trying to push the direction of story with Heroes of the Storm. Now, this isn't actually new. As I've pointed out before, Heroes of the Storm has a weird amount of background lore to it. And now they're trying to bring the background lore into the foreground. You know, they've got that comic about the Raven Lord and about his efforts against the Crypt Keeper, blah, 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 blah. And once again, I have to point out that as I'm talking this out, you could probably see the trend I'm portraying here. Here's the Storm feels like it's bringing in more story, more content, and also more, let's just call them microtransactions. And Hearthstone is bringing in more content and more gameplay modes and more story and more microtransactions. And Overwatch is blah, 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 blah. You see where I'm going with this. All three of the games that have been receiving colossal amounts of support and have been making money hand over fist seem to be following a similar pattern. And getting back to my original point, I don't know if that mentality has been affecting anybody who actually works at Blizzard or at Blizzard Activision. I don't know. Again, I can only speculate in a vacuum. Now, if you're paying attention, there's one game I haven't mentioned on this list, and that's World of Warcraft. World of Warcraft has been doing incredibly well, better than it has been in years and years. Legion was a smash hit, not just critically, but financially. Legion has been consistently bringing in a fairly large chunk of money. So I suppose they're basically just willing to let WoW do WoW. I'm not really sure what to think of that, but I honestly do feel at this point that you could take World of Warcraft and shuffle it over there into its own division, because what they do about WoW doesn't really connect all that well with what they do about their other products. It's not like WoW doesn't have microtransactions. It does. It's got the in-game pet store, it's got the in-game mount store, and it has the token thing, which I am in favor of, by the way, the token thing. But unlike the other products I just mentioned, they haven't been doing a lot to continue to produce new microtransactions. They haven't been pushing that angle with World of Warcraft, which is unusual, to be completely blunt. Maybe it's just because WoW is making plenty of money as is. I don't know. Like I said, I don't know.
Your dedication will be rewarded.
Well, now there's a Lich King on a Lich King. That's just unpleasant. Thank you, Sonic Doctor. jot that down. Thank you. If I could turn money into health, I'd probably be fine. I mean, you technically can. Ah, that's true, Draculus. For those of you not aware, in Legion, they did do one thing very different. Don't worry, this is connected. They made it so that each class has a distinct storyline and story arc. It's one of the reasons it's been such a colossal pain to set it up for a lore run, because I basically have to play through Legion 12 times, right? In order, and I have to record everything because I can't just do all that live. I have like 140 something files to edit together. I swear I'm going to work on it at some point. I just haven't had time. Anyways, in BFA, they're pushing a slightly different angle. They're making it so that they're trying to make it so that the Alliance and the Horde have exceptionally different leveling experiences, different story experiences, different quests. Now, if you don't understand why that's unusual, let's take a look at Legion. In Legion, there was one significant quest arc that flowed through Stormheim that was different for the Alliance or the Horde, for reasons I'm not going to spoil right here. Otherwise, whether you were Alliance or Horde was effectively irrelevant for the entirety of the rest of Legion's content. Both sides got the same story and the same quests, with very, very minor cosmetic changes here and there, mostly in Suramar. In Warlords, it was the same thing. Alliance had one zone to themselves, Shadowmoon Valley, and the Horde had one zone to themselves, which I can't remember the name of right now. Everything else was completely neutral. And that's actually been the pattern for a while now. Pandaria is a good example of this too. Pandaria has differing content 3 times, but in all 3 cases, it's not even a full zone. It's just like a few quests are different. So the fact that they're trying to push the idea that the Alliance will have a completely different questing and leveling experience than the Horde is new. And it's also probably going to... I wouldn't be surprised if it affects player retention. And more to the point, I would not be surprised if it affects, as Draculus said, people trying to go ahead and race change for whatever reason, because there's a lot of reasons that are going to come up with that. In BFA, there's a lot of content that's going to be faction locked rather than class locked. Sorry, let me catch my breath for a second. I am really not doing great here. Thank you all for joining me for this. I do agree with something that Ken Viper said, by the way, where he mentions people who only play one side are cutting themselves off to part of the game. That's absolutely true. That was probably most predominant in Cataclysm, because there are several zones whose story arcs are literally both sides. To explain what I mean a little bit better, this is why, if you remember, I did several zones in Cataclysm very specifically for the lore run, because the only way to properly show the whole story is to like do a couple quests in the Horde, and then do a couple quests in the Alliance, and then do a couple quests in the Horde, etc., etc. Because effectively, if you were to merge them, it is one singular story, and then they chopped it in 2 for the Alliance and for the Horde. And that it's awesome. I think it made a wonderful story arc, and it made some fantastic storytelling. Some of my favorite zones were in Cataclysm that did that thing. But if you only play Alliance, you get a very limited example of what happened. There's actually another example of this in Pandaria. I can't tell you how many people thought Jaina was just some crazy witch in Pandaria because they only played Horde. And I can't tell you how many people thought that the Horde were evil scumsuckers because they only played the Alliance. There was several story arcs in Pandaria, mostly the, not the questing stuff, but the post-questing stuff, which dealt with a developing storyline between the 2 sides. And again, you had to see both sides to get the full picture. Now, I do like that. Oh, yeah, I wasn't even getting into allied races. Allied races have been wildly popular, and I would bet money that people are going to be willing to drop money in order to race change into an allied race. I mean, why would you want to make a new race and level them up to 110 or 20 or whatever it's going to be, just to have to basically gear up and get all the achievements and get all the mounts and whatever else all over again? No, it's just turn your existing Bob into a Bobette. Anyways, I didn't mean to get off on talking about WoW. I apologize, guys. This is all just kind of this aggregate thing about creativity. Because I don't know. I don't know if there's some kind of stifling effect going on at Blizzard Activision right now. And I don't know if people are just getting tired of doing the same thing and want to try something new. Now, I hope we don't have a repeat of... Oh, God, I can't think of his name. Who's the guy who voices the standard orc peon? He was the only voice actor in Warcraft 1. God, I can't think of his damn name. God damn it, it's not telling me. Come on, Google. I am not pleased by it. Notrory, excuse me. I can't think of his name. Anyways, there's this guy who was like the voice actor for Blizzard back in the day. He did pretty much, I think he did literally all the voices in Warcraft 1 and a huge portion of the voices in Warcraft 2. He decided to split from the company, and Bill Roper, thank you. God damn. Couldn't think of his name. Roper. And Roper got an ego, to put that as bluntly as I can. And he decided to wander off and do his own thing, and that kind of failed miserably. I am hopeful that we will not see a repeat of that at this point in time with the large number of people who have recently left Blizzard. I mean, I had nothing against Roper until he got an ego. I'm not even sure what he's doing anymore. Anyways, and yeah, Lothraxion, I will talk about Lothraxion in more detail during the lore run, because unfortunately or not, there are specifics about him we don't know, so a lot of it is speculation. I know exactly what I think happened, and remember, we've known for some time, since Pandaria really, that demons are effectively hired. That, you know, that's been true since forever, apparently, that the demons have to have their services purchased by whatever it is they like, magic or whatever. So, it doesn't surprise me to see a Nethrazim who isn't mwahaha evil. That would be funny. I hope so, Lucas. But anyways, the other thing I wanted to comment on, getting back to that whole creative thing, one of the things I've noticed and this is predominantly true in so many different aspects of creative works, is that someone will say, man, I'm really popular because of A, and I hate it. I hate being popular because of A. God damn it. And so then they like strike out to do something as different from A as possible. And it almost always flops horribly. Like really badly. Like, oh my god. Anybody who's followed the music careers of virtually anyone could probably name several examples off the top of your head. you know what I'm talking about. This is common with artists. This is common with musicians and bands. This is common with authors. And this is common with game developers as well. In fact, someone earlier mentioned, oh man, Elder Scrolls 6 is going to be at E3. I would say with 99% certainty that Elder Scrolls 6 will not be at E3 because of an interview that was done recently where it was mentioned that the developers do not want to be just the Fallout and the Elder Scrolls guys. They want to work on some other projects. Now, we might see something of that Starfall game or whatever the hell it is, but not Elder Scrolls. Anyways, so it's a very, very common thing. And I've noticed that there's 3 categories of how that tends to go. First is the category where they lunge out and they do something completely different, and it bombs. Again, anybody who follows any musical careers could probably give plenty of examples of that. I'm not going to bother. Some people tried something new, may or may not actually work out for them, and then settles on some kind of like a middle ground and just kind of resigns themselves to it. But the third category is the one that really amuses me personally, and I have an example for this one. The third category is someone who's like, and then they try to strike out, and it fails, and then they re-embrace the original thing. I don't mean just they accept it. I don't mean that they just say, okay, fine, I will resign myself to this. No, they embrace whatever it was that originally made them great, and then they leverage that and work out from that as a standing point. The example I want to give for that is Leonard Nimoy. Anybody who has actually followed the career of Leonard Nimoy knows that he was a nobody before Star Trek. He was a struggling actor who took his art and craft very seriously. And he, well, how much he actually hated Star Trek is a matter of debate. But there is no denying that he tried to distance himself from that as hard and fast as possible. And that didn't work out well. Instead, he embraced his role as Spock, used that to push his writing career, his directing career, and his voice acting career, and started spreading out a little bit more. So, I mentioned this, once again, bringing this back to the original topic, that I hope that these people who are bowing out of Blizzard will try to accept either the second or the third category thing here, and won't run off to do something completely different, just because they're frustrated or aggravated or whatever. And I suppose it's not like I don't understand. For a while there, I used to get frustrated that people thought of me as the Mass Effect guy, when percentage-wise I have covered Mass Effect very rarely, actually, compared to the wealth of the other things I've done in my show. I get it. I suppose that is actually all I have to say on the subject. I could do another topic, but honestly, this is exhausting, just sitting here talking like this. Isn't that sad? Yes, now I'm the Final Fantasy guy, obviously. No, I'm not the anything guy, and I'm okay with that. I am very definitively a variety show, and I think I have rather successfully embraced that particular persona. I don't know what word to use here. Now that's funny, because I do admit I do have a negative stigma for being the lore guy, for being the guy who only cares about the story and nothing else, which is incredibly not true. I've been just kind of quietly fighting against that over the years, trying to make it more and more clear that I do actually care about gameplay and game mechanics and game design, not just the lore. But, yeah. That is a good point, Solaris. I'm sitting here gesturing as if I'm on camera. Yeah, Kingdom Come Deliverance is a fantastic example of being told this game will not sell. I don't actually know the financial figures of Kingdom Come Deliverance. I hope it sold very well. It is a game that, in my opinion, deserves to be financially successful. It's not enough to be creatively successful. You know? What do I call it? I actually have a lorium for that. Princess Bride, that's it, the Princess Bride effect. Princess Bride effect, for those of you not aware or don't read my loriums page, is when, is when something doesn't sell well when it comes out. A lot of time passes, and then it becomes very creatively successful. So, that happens a lot. Earthbound, it's another one. It's a SNES game, if you've never heard of it. Earthbound really did not do well financially when it came out. Nowadays, it's considered one of the best RPGs of the era. And yeah, God of War 4 selling crazy is awesome. Actually, I agree with you, Draculus. I finally had the treat of going through Blade Runner 2049, and though I didn't have a huge amount of things to say about it, as you guys will see when we get to that rumination, I did. It was a good movie. It was a really good movie. I don't know what else to add to that. It's funny you say that, Ken Viper. I guess part of the reason why I want games or creative works that are good to be financially successful is twofold. First of all, because I want to reward the person. I know that sounds stupid, but I want those people to be like, yeah, you know, this sold well. There's a satisfaction in that, and there's also a degree of personal reward in that, you know. In other words, you get to keep your job and you get the possibility of continuing your job, you know, like a literal tangible reward for having a financially successful work. And the second reason is because I want those people to keep making those works. There are several people who have made movies and books and shows and games which were, you know, Princess Bride effect, and then those people stopped making things because it didn't sell well. And you can kind of see the parallel there. You can see the logic. It's like, well, nobody bought it, so I'm just going to kind of do my own thing now. And then later on, people are like, oh, this is amazing. Why didn't you make more? Well, because nobody paid for it when it came out, you know? So those are the two big reasons why I wish financial success upon what I consider to be good creative works. Anyways, I'm basically devolving into rambling at this point. I apologize. I need to message third, speaking of which. At some point, yeah, Lovecraft, that's a good example. There are plenty of authors and painters, too, who didn't become popular until after they were no longer in a position to benefit from it, either because they died or because they were too sick or too old. That is a unfortunately common thing. Anyways, so I'm going to go ahead and chop off the Loreweek. I am going to make an effort to keep streaming Kingdom Come Deliverance. So